Hello and welcome back to the Rams Talk podcast. Now, today is the midweek episode. It is currently January 15th and Derby were coming off the back of a disappointing result last night away to Leyton Orient in the FA Cup where we drew 1-1 but unfortunately bowed out on penalties. However, there is some positivity today as Derby have actually made the first signing of the January transfer window in 2025. We've signed the Norwegian striker Lars-Jørgensen Salvesen from Viking FK for an undisclosed fee of around 800,000, it's reported, which is really positive to be bringing in a striker into the team, as I think we could definitely do with a couple more goals going in the back of the net for us. But today I'm joined with Dan and Nick. Dan, how are you?
All good. Like I said to Jake the last time I was on, that was off the back of a defeat and a really poor performance, but all good apart from that. So let's get into it.
Yeah, that's great. And then Nick, how are you as well?
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Happy to be making the debut. Good to be on. Yeah, followed for a while. Like to contribute.
Yeah, it's good to have you on and talking about all things Derby County. And we'll start off on the positive note of the signing of Salvesen, which is really important for Derby County and for a fee as well, which can be surprising for Derby County. And in recent times, at the moment, we know we like to be active in the loan and free department, but I'll go to you, Dan, first. How important of a sign is this for us? We know we've primarily gone with Yates up front, and we've mainly scored goals from set pieces. But how important is it to have another striker in the building and someone who's come off the back of some good form, most recently abroad?
Well, we spoke before we come on. I don't know too much about the guy. I actually like the fact he's a little more experienced because we're going to need him to hit the ground running. He's going to need to hit the ground running because he's going to need the fan base behind him fast. I've said in the group, said to a lot of different people around me as well, the workload we've placed this season on Jerry Yates is the reason we're not seeing the best of Jerry Yates. And I'm hoping that this gentleman from Norway can bring that out of him.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's an interesting sign. It's a player who looks on the highlight reels, and you can't judge players off them, as I think every player looks good on the highlight reel, but he's very different to how Jerry Yates plays. Yeah. He's very different to how Jerry Yates plays, and I think it'll be interesting to see whether we do go with him and Jerry Yates up front. And I think that's the question I'm going to put to you, Nick, now about, obviously we know Paul Warne likes to play with the wing backs. Do you think we're going to see Salvesen playing a joint top two with Jerry Yates for the remainder of the season as much as we can play them both together?
I think that's best for Yates. I think Yates has looked best this season. You think of the Coventry game, he's looked best with a partner, whoever that's been. Brown, Jackson, whatever he does there, that's another conversation. I struggle to have any confidence that Warne actually knows what his best formation is, though. I've made the point a couple of times that this constant chopping and changing is no good for anybody, no good for the squad, no good for cohesion, no good for the fan base. It gets on his back. If the back three, back five, call it what you will, if that's his formation, stick to your principles. I think it'd get the best out of Yates. I think the new guy looks like the sort of big target man we've been crying out for ever since Chrissy Martin left. There's been that conversation between the fan base, hasn't there, for 5-6 years? That we need a striker of that ilk. So I think he could play on his own quite comfortably, as we've said. That's not Yates's bag, however hard he's tried this season. So it could be a chance and a way to stick with a 3-5-2, whatever my personal thoughts may be on it, whatever the fans' personal thoughts may be on it. If that is one style and that'll keep us up, let's do it. Let's have some cohesion. Let's stop chopping and changing.
Yeah, I think that's important, especially now we're entering that second half of the season where games get a little bit more sporadic and difficult towards the end of them, when that game management really comes in. And I think Derby have struggled with, recently the substitutions we've brought on have not really had a major impact on the game. So I think it's important that like you say, we just have a little bit of cohesion, a little bit of form to the team, I think, as well. If I know it's been a little bit unlucky with injuries in the midfield, which doesn't help us our team. I think our best position is probably that midfield three so far this season. So I think with players returning from injury, it'll be good to see that cohesion. And even if players dip in and out of form, it happens. But just sticking with that same formation, I think, can play into our strengths. We know we like to play out wide. We've got a very good wide player in Kane Wilson, who's, I think, and Callum. So I think it's important we play to our strengths in this second half of the season, especially at home. I know we wanted to improve away from home as well, but definitely at home. And hopefully Salvesen can partner Jerry Yates up front, and we can see a different strike force to what we've seen in this first half of the season, and a couple more goals from open play. And I think that leads me on to my next thought about this signing, is that we've currently got probably 3 players sitting in behind Salvesen in terms of the pecking order, in Dosanjh Brown, obviously the young player coming through the academy at Derby. We've got James Collins and Connor Washington. Dan, do you think we're going to see a departure in any of those 3? Maybe Brown going out on loan to a League One, League Two club, and then maybe a permanent move for Washington and Collins. Can you see any of those 3 moving on this January?
I think personally, I speak for a lot of the fan base where I'd like to see the back of Connor Washington. It's nothing personal. It just kind of feels like he's just been a drain on us. As for Dej, I've got an unpopular opinion where I'd like him to stay. We've seen it in the past when we've sent young strikers out on loan and it hasn't really worked out. I think let's throw him in there, not to start, but let's keep him there. And I think he'll take that till the end of the year. I'd like to see us go out and get another striker. Sounds greedy, but I really do think we needed 2 in this window. So I'm hoping that that's still in the pipeline, along with probably a left back, I'd say, is high on the order as well.
Yeah, I think it's interesting you say another striker, because obviously we've seen Chirera have his loan cancelled. He's gone back to Wolves. That's freed up another loan spot, and whether we could use that loan market for a young player to come in. But then you mentioned about Dosanjh Brown staying. I'm a fan of his, and I'd like to see him given a little bit more game time and a little bit more, I think, thought behind him coming on off the bench. I think at times we've seen him thrown into games where maybe we're 2-0 down and we're not in the game at all, and he struggles to get service. I think when he has started, he's always put in a decent account. Burnley away, I thought his hold-up play was good, and he was able to take the ball down. Obviously, he scored yesterday against Leyton Orient, which is important for him, more minutes in the first team and a start, and also important as he sort of proved his point, I think, twice now, that he can compete in this team. Obviously, with the goal against Hull earlier on the season and the goal yesterday. So I think it's quite interesting, and I probably agree with you about a left back. I think we need some cover for Elder, because I don't think Elder can play that Tuesday, Saturday every week. So definitely a first choice. Well, a player can compete with Callum Elder and come in as backup is important, because probably we've only really got Craig Forsyth in that natural left-hand side, and I think Forsyth's an ageing player who probably just needs to come on in little drabs at the end of games, I think. But I think another question to you, Nick, now is, obviously we'll move on and talk about the disappointing FA Cup game yesterday. It's disappointing to go out. I think it doesn't help that the game was postponed, and then we found out we could have played Manchester City at home in the next game, which everybody was speculating about revenue that we could earn from that fixture. And you welcome in one of the best teams in English football at the moment at home, and it was a massive draw. And I think the reaction maybe to the result yesterday would have been a little bit less harsh if it maybe drew a team in the Championship or lower down the leagues. But it was a disappointing loss. I want to try and keep it a little bit upbeat. Do you view it as a disappointing exit of the Cup, obviously with the chance to play Man City, or do you view it one, Nick, where it's the classic cliche of maybe focus on the league a little bit more with the current position we're in, the expectations for the season we've got?
It's a bit catch-22, isn't it? I was all for getting an away win and getting some confidence in the lads and in the team. I think when the lineup came out, 6-4 came out, you looked at it, he made 3 changes. We put the second string out at all. It was a strong team. I think on balance, most sensible fans that understand football would have said, yeah, that's probably about the best balance. The most disappointing thing yet again is just the drab performance. particularly against a team of that standard. You take out that it's a cup exit and whatever, that's a midweek away game against a fairly nothing team that we've yet again failed to perform in, is the problem with it. You know, let's skip the we could have played City hype. I saw that as an away game and a chance to get confidence. And that's the most disappointing thing, I think, for me, is that we didn't take it to a team that we put away quite comfortably twice last year. With
just tag on to the back of that,
a weaker squad.
I'll just tag on to the back of that, Nick, as well. Like last week, we were told midweek by Warne, I believe he sort of gave an inclination onto what the squad was going to look like going into the game on Saturday before it got postponed, with the youth players being involved. Then all of a sudden, that didn't happen. And it's almost like he got read the memo of, you need to win this game because we need this revenue from this tie. That's why I feel the repercussions we might not see. The repercussions.
We were given the hindsight, weren't we, of the draw?
And then
I think I ironically made the point that we actually did have 5 youth players, if you counted Ben Osborne from 20 odd years ago. And but yeah, you're dead right. And I think, again, I made the point earlier in the week that another loss is only going to increase the noise. That Saturday could get a bit loud if we can defer.
I think, you're dead. You're right there about the fact that we probably should have just looked at it as another Tuesday night away game and a chance for a little bit of confidence, because we've put out that strong starting team. I know a couple of players have come in from the periphery to start and been given the opportunity to prove that they should be in that first team, and we played a pretty strong team. And I listened to it on the radio, so I can't give the best opinion about how we played on the pitch, but from the highlights, created a couple of half chances here and there. The first goal to concede was sloppy from the back line to switch off and allow him in on a one-on-one. It was a neat bit of play to score the goal. Mendes Lang does well, harnesses sharp to square it to Jean Brown, but it's that strong team that we've started, and I think that leads me on to my next point of, I think time and time again this season we've seen Kenzo Houdmine taken off at the 60th, 70th minute, and whether that's for fitness reasons or he looks tired, that's completely fine. But then yesterday he's played the full game, including extra time and the penalties. Yeah, 2 hours, and I think it's frustrating. And probably how frustrating is it for you, Dan, when we've gone away from home, when we've subbed him off on the 60th, 70th, when he's looked probably our most creative player in the game, or probably the player that's maybe 1 or 2 steps ahead of everybody else on the pitch? How frustrating is it that he gets subbed off in those games? But then the game against Leyton Orient, he's played the full 120 minutes and the penalties. And we've also got the game on Saturday where we could potentially see him subbed off early again.
I think it's important to not avoid giving Kenzo criticism as well, because it's also based around how he's performing when he's on the pitch. I mean, I do like the look of him, and I do think long term he's going to be a good player for us. But there has been a lot of games this season where I haven't seen a lot from him. He is not having a huge impact on the game. As for last night, I think Warne's seen that as an opportunity to give him the full 90 minutes plus added time to probably help himself as well as the team in getting confidence that he can complete a full game. I do expect him to start on Saturday, but I think the way the game plays out, I think we could see him go off. But I think it'll be a tactical thing on Saturday. I think he'll go off because it'll be a case of possibly, hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll be defending a lead, and I think he'll be replaced with someone to come on and help defend that lead.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a good point there, because I think I think everybody should consider that tactically. If we are defending a lead at home, I know it's rare that we're defending a lead away from home, I'll be completely honest. We're usually chasing the game. But I think it's important to remember that Houdmine's that attacking player, and when you've got better defensive players on the bench, such as Ben Osborne, probably Liam Thompson falls into that category as well. Sometimes we do have to make the change to Houdmine. I'd probably agree with you. I think away from home, Houdmine has a struggle to put his stamp on the game, I would say. I think at home he does it really well. in the time that he gets on the ball. I think the opposition gives us a little bit more respect at home. Then I think away from home when the game's scrappy, I think Houdmine probably isn't that player you want when either you're defending a lead or you're looking for that one goal. I think, if there's a better defensive player on the bench towards the end of the game against Watford and we're winning, then I think you can understand that change. I think this is probably a good segment now to go into.
I think my just quick one on my counterpoint to that though is that Kenzo is the most technically gifted footballer that we've got, and he's that one that doesn't look like losing the ball as much, and he gets it, and he's got very good passing accuracy, and he's not being, again, he's another one that Warne's forcing into a role. He's not being played in an attacking role. I'd take your point. If we'd started Adams, Osborne and Houdman, and then you were going to take Houdman off for Thompson, that's fine. But there's these games where we're starting Adams, Houdman and Harness, and then we're hooking Houdman.
The injury to Ozo didn't help Goodman
nothing
either.
In that 10 role. Houdman at least holds the ball up in a different way that a striker holds the ball up, and he's very difficult to get it off. And he might not have had the impact in all of the games that we've all hoped. And yeah, you're bang right that the Ozo injury has derailed some plans. Once again, that for me is a question on the recruitment department of who is doing the due diligence on these players that we bring in. I reckoned up that we've signed 28 players under Warne, and 8 of them have had serious long-term injury issues. That's a horrific record. And that's not entirely down to Paul Warne. David Clowes ever listens to this, I'll take the head of recruitment job for 50 grand a year less than you're paying the current man. Because he clearly can't pick a player. But yeah, the David Ozo injury hasn't helped anything. But if we hear back on the grass one more time, I think we're all going to drive down the training ground, aren't we? So
yeah, and I think it's interesting to look at both sides of it with Kenzo Houdmine. I think everybody focuses on him so much because, like you say, he probably is our best technical player outfield, and you want him to kind of be that magic man in the middle who can create things for us and create goals from open play. And we have seen that, I think, at home. I think we'd missed it a little bit away from home, and I think we just wished to see him on for that full 90. But on the flip side, the midfield that we've currently have to use in most recent times hasn't been the strongest one. We mentioned the Ozo injury. I think that Adams, Ozo and Houdmine midfield will be our best, and I think it's difficult when Houdmine has to play a little bit deeper because Marcus Harness's best position is that 10 or out wide. And when it's a midfield of Adams, Houdmine and Harness, we have to kind of ensure that Houdmine plays a little bit deeper to allow Harness to play further forward, because Harness isn't as versatile as Houdmine, which I think it's difficult when I think midfield is always up for contention at Derby County, especially in the Paul one, because it chops and changes so much. And I think, yeah, we'll talk about that, I'm sure, for many weeks and months under Warne and injuries come in and players come in our form. But I think moving on now into the segment, we've got a 5-minute preview now from the Do Not Scratch Your Eyes podcast, the Watford fan podcast, and they've given us a really good insight into what the opposition fans think ahead of this game on Saturday, Derby County versus Watford. So, yeah, sit back and enjoy this little preview from them.
Hello, I'm Justin from Do Not Scratch Your Eyes.
Hello, I'm Peter from Do Not Scratch Your Eyes.
And we're giving you a bit of a preview on Watford, who will be playing Derby soon. The questions we've received are, how well have Watford performed this season? Peter, how have Watford performed this season?
Fairly schizophrenically, I would suggest. We started off the season like a house on fire. We won the first 5 games of the season in a row, which never happens for Watford. We were basically unbeaten at home for 17 games from the back end of last season, and needless to say, we've lost the last 2. However, away from home, Watford have been a different animal entirely. We've only had 2 wins, and those have been kind of a bit odd, including beating Sheffield Wednesday 6-2 away. So at Pride Park, it will be an interesting one to see how it goes.
What was the reaction to our previous fixture?
Well, after about 45 seconds, when Derby went a goal up, not entirely positive, one can imagine, you can understand that. And then we got back into it with a goal from Vacuum Bio, who is a hard-working centre-forward who sometimes doesn't look like he's ever seen a ball, even in passing, and yet he scored a worldie. Pulling off one of your, if you'll excuse the expression, pulling off one of the Derby centre-backs in for a ball from Matty Pollock, and then he pirouetted and hit it in front of the travelling Derby fans. And we all were like, looking for proof of identity that it was indeed Vacuum Bio who just did that. It kept kind of tight. Derby, I have to say, Derby put 10 men and more behind the ball for long periods of time, and then finally it fell to Musa Sissoko, who I think came off the bench to win the game.
Any weaknesses in this Watford team? I think you've just mentioned two.
How much time do you want?
We mentioned two, Sissoko and Bio.
So far, we've been playing with two forwards. Bio, who you can tell how much Justin and I love him, despite him being the third top scorer. But a lot of that is down to his 4 goals away at Sheffield Wednesday. We don't understand it either. Don't look for logic here. It doesn't exist. Forwards are odd. We had a lad on loan from Bournemouth. He's gone back. So we've only got Bio, and at the time of recording, a lad who is a Malian international who played against Fulham when we lost in the FA Cup. And did all right. He's got good things, but he's obviously very young. So we haven't got much firepower in the centre forward area. Where we are strong is behind that, but we'll get onto that. Where we are weak is we have conceded shed loads of goals. We score lots and we concede lots. We would have normally say Dan Bachmann is a weakness, but unfortunately Dan Bachmann is now injured, so we have another weakness, which is Jonathan Bond as deputy goalkeeper. Came in for Fulham, conceded 4, missed one at the near post, which I think he'll be disappointed with. But it's very hard to come back and get some momentum. So I think in that area that's a little bit weak, and we've got injuries in midfield.
Which players are likely to cause the most damage to this Derby team?
What I mean by looking at the centre forward area as the teams who are going to kind of weakness, but behind the front, the front player is we either play as a 3 and they kind of play as kind of 2 number 10s, to use modern parlance, or if we play a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-1-4-1, as we often do, because we do have some players. Chakvetadze is ripping up the championship, and he is a bundle of joy to see. He advances the ball and runs and is a nightmare, and he's very strong. Problem is his goals and assists record are not as good as his chances created. He has created more chances and goal scoring opportunities in the championship than anybody else, but he scored about 4 goals and had about 4 assists, which, bearing in mind his chance creation is up in the 50s, gives you an idea of why we might be moaning about the centre forward occasionally. On the other side, or sometimes on the same side, is a kid called Rocco Vata, and unless Derby fans have had their heads in buckets, they will have seen the goal that young Rocco Vata scored away at Fulham in the Cup. The ultimate consolation goal. In as much as it wasn't a consolation goal, it brought us back into 1-1, but don't worry, Watford forgot about their business and duly lost 4-1 by the end. But Rocco Vata picked up a ball from one of the centre-backs, turned, ran 15 yards maybe, and absolutely mullered one into the top corner. We got him from Celtic at the start of the season. He will run at players. He's a tricky player. He'll start off the left and break in. But the great thing is, if literally anywhere from 30 yards out, he'll take a pop. He will absolutely take a pop, and he's got an absolute diamond finish on him. So Chakvetadze and Vata. And for good measure, we have a young player called Kwadwo Bar, which just rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? And imagine a young kind of Adama Traore, but even more so. He's the lad who kind of was one of the ones who came on and created the goal, the winning goal for us at Derby at home. He's a lot of fun as well. So we do have some good stuff, and therefore the season has been enjoyable, if frustrating on occasions.
Score predictions for the game.
This is your area. I'm not getting pinned down on this.
No, we're going to lose. Basically, we're away. We're not doing very well at the moment. I think we've lost 4 of our last 5. Is that correct, Peter?
No, we've lost 5 out of the last 6.
5 including the FA Cup game in that.
Including the FA Cup.
Yeah, so we're not doing very well at the moment. Our away form's terrible, so let's go for 2-0 Derby.
Well, that's definitely interesting. Some thoughts ahead of the game. coming up on Saturday. Derby, we've obviously lost 3 league games in a row. We'll forget the Leyton Orient game. I won't add that in to make it a 4th loss in a row. But we've had 3 losses in a row now. The last game we won was at home, which was in our favour. Obviously, the West Brom game, a 2-1 win for us. Now, obviously, Dan, you've heard the Watford fans say they're not too optimistic ahead of this one. Do you see this one as a must-win, coming off the back of the form that we're in, and the fact Watford have struggled away from home?
I love their confidence for us. I don't know whether they've watched us play lately. I've said to you guys in the group chat, and I've said to people around me as well, every single home game between now and the end of the season is being made into a must-win because we can't get a result away from home. Like I said, I think that their confidence in us, I appreciate it, but I'm actually going to go with them on it because I do think that we will win the game, because I think we need to win the game, and when we need to win a game, we tend to get a result under Warne. I didn't have my head in a bin because I did see the goal that the lad scored, but Derby do have a good history of keeping flair players at bay. I think with Watford, they've been a team for probably the last number of years that you don't really know what you're going to get out of them. They could turn up on Saturday and really put a beating on us, or we could put a beating on them. They're probably the epiphany of a mid-table team, but they have performed probably slightly better this season than their fans predicted, even with the fantastic end to the second half of last season.
Yeah, I think we desperately need some points, maybe a goal or 2 as well, to put some positivity back into everything. Now, I think it's obviously been reported that Salvesen hasn't played a game since December the 1st, and he's most likely going to start on the bench, Nick. But are you confident ahead of this one? Same question I put to Dan there.
Oh, first of all, I'll say that the Watford guys that do that podcast clearly don't know Derby County law, do they? Because the most dangerous players in the Watford team are obviously Tom Ince and Festi Ebeselli. Not necessarily because they're the best players, but because they used to play for Derby, and it's absolutely nailed on that one of them is going to assist the other in some form of crucial goal, just because that's what happens. Interestingly, Czech Vedanci has assisted 5 and only scored 1, so they don't know the stats for him either. Although every time I've seen him, he looks very good. Hopefully, Ibu can sit on him and do a job that way. Yeah, I mean they say that Watford is schizophrenic. What does that make Derby? I'd love to think positive head on, rolling with the heart. I'd love to think that we will get a result against them. They're an interesting team because their goals and for and against are not massively dissimilar to Derby, really, which says to me that they've just maybe got a little bit more nous in seeing some games out and picking up a couple more points, whereas we've chucked points away at certain times this season. I don't expect the big man to start. I don't think. I think we will go 4-2-3-1 as we seem to do at home, and I think that's why Yates was completely out of the squad the other night. So I think that's the way that we'll go and start, and then he's got 2 options, hasn't he? Then the big man, he's either coming on in a pile of glory when we're a couple of goals up for a dream home debut, or we're chucking him on after 50 minutes to try and Warne's chucking him on to try and save his job. That's never going to happen, no matter how badly we're losing. But yeah, it will be. I think Dan's right. Every time we've had pressure on us, we seem to pull something out of the bag from somewhere. Watford aren't in great form. They've won 1 in 6. We've won 2 in 6. So theoretically, we're in slightly better form than they are. And it's interesting, isn't it, to hear fans of other teams that are just outside the playoffs and 11 points better off not being massively positive about their own team. What we'd give for for 38 points right now.
Yeah, I think that probably sums up the league as well. Your last point, that I think, like we say, a team just outside the playoffs, 11 points better, but not too optimistic heading to Derby. When we're probably not in our best form either at all. So I think it's quite interesting. I think a lot of the teams in the division this year are sort of very much alike, one or two quality players, but could go either way. I think that's how most people have described each game this season in each fan base. But I'll come to you now with the final question of the episode. Dan, I'll come to you first. What's your score prediction ahead of this home tie against Watford?
First and foremost, I think that the levels of performance have got to be much, much higher. The last 3-4 weeks have not been acceptable. That's not me saying that I think we should be any higher than a bottom 6, bottom 8 side. We spoke about the Bristol City game before we went live. Totally unacceptable performance. And that's why I'm going to go for a 1-0 win to Derby.
And Nick,
I'm not going to give a goal scorer because no one jumps out at me. There's not one player that I hope it is the new guy, because if he hits the ground running, it's only beneficial for us, and we're desperate for a spark.
Nick, I'll come to you. It's a positive one coming off now.
Heart says 2-1 Derby, with us going 2-0 up and then conceding a daft goal and clinging on. Head says a deflating 1-1 with either Tom Ince or Festi Ebeselli getting the equaliser to burst the bubble. Is what the honest head says. But I'll be a Heart man this week. I'll say 2-1 Derby. Two goals up, cruising at half time. Yates and Kenzo.
Yeah, I think two optimistic scores, two positive scores. I think we need that little bit of positivity, lift up the fan base. But I think I'll go with what you said, Nick. I'll say a 2-1 win. I'm hoping Salvesen can come off the bench and score a goal and just hit the ground run, like you said, Dan. And just lift the spirits a bit, because I think we need that, don't we? But no, I think we'll end the episode there. I hope everybody's enjoyed listening. He's looking forward to this game against Watford. I've got a feeling we're going to get something out of it. I think classic Derby fashion will come off the back of some bad form and put in a decent performance and get 3 points on the board that we need. So if you have enjoyed this episode, please do rate us 5 stars on wherever you listen, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. You can watch us and see our faces on YouTube as we talk this through, and we're on all the social medias that you'd expect. So thank you for listening, and this has been the midweek episode in between Leyton Orient and Derby County facing Watford on Saturday.